Finally, Paul George, a breakout night for the Philadelphia 76ers. And hey, they can win some games without Joel Embiid, without Jared McCain, if he can keep this up.
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Locked On 76ers. We're your hosts, Keith Pompey and Kayla Santiago, as the 76ers coming off a big win. About time. Before we touch into that, we have to talk about the college football playoffs. They are here, and you don't want to miss a moment of the action. The college football playoffs presented by Allstate begins with 4 first-round games, December 20th and 21st on ESPN, ABC, TNT, and Max. So the 76ers come out on top 121 to 108. Paul George has his best game as the Philadelphia 76ers. Tyrese Maxey is out there putting up big numbers, and the bench comes alive. We're going to touch on all of that. My biggest takeaway right now, though, is that Paul George is going to be the difference maker when Joel Embiid is out of lineup, and he showed us last night that he can be that guy. The biggest question is going to be, can he keep that up? I think that he can, because finally, Keith, he showed us a glimpse of what he can do and how he can be at his best with this team.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, it was his best performance. I'm not trying to be the negative guy to it, but I'm not being negative. So I hope I'm not being negative. But I'm not surprised by what Paul George did. I feel like, when they played the Hornets before, the last time they played, Paul George had 29 points on 6 for 9 shooting from 3. Right. So when you look at that, he actually scored 4 more points, and he made the same amount of threes, right? So I always felt like Paul George could do this. I just feel like Joel Embiid kind of stunted it when he came back a little bit. And then when we look at it, he also had 21 points and 9 assists when they played the Orlando Magic, which was the 3rd best team in the league. So, yes, it was a great performance by PG, but it also goes to show you what they can do when they give Paul George the ball, when they incorporate him. So, yeah, he played extremely well. He played like a guy that could help lead them somewhere. This was the Charlotte Hornets, though, but at the same time, it was one of those things where it was a great performance. But I wasn't shocked that he did it just because he had 29 and made 6 of 9 threes last time and had 8 assists the last time they played the Charlotte Hornets.
And he was able to get 10th all time on the 3-point list as well. So kind of a little bit of a historic night last night for Paul George. We're going to touch on PG throughout this episode a lot. Of course, that's the big headline, that he had a really big top performance with the Philadelphia 76ers. But there's a lot to kind of look at throughout this game. Tyrese Maxey putting up 40 points as well, 5 assists, 4 steals, 6 for 12 from a 3-point land. So when you look at Tyrese Maxey, Keith, it seems that he can play really well with Paul George. He can play really well with Joel Embiid. The 3 of them haven't gotten together yet, but this is something to look forward to if Paul George and Tyrese Maxey can keep this up. Once again, it is just the Hornets, and I totally understand that. But at the same time, Tyrese Maxey is a player that can have a big time night at any point. What was it like seeing him out there, being able to kind of get back to that and being able to be that guy once again? Because it has been up and down, kind of as of late a little bit for Tyrese, with Joel coming back in the lineup. It's been an up and down season overall.
Yeah, and the reason why I just want to go back, I don't want to sound like I'm being negative or anything like this, but the one thing we got to understand is when Joel Embiid comes, Joel Embiid is like the first option. Right. So Tyrese Maxey isn't going to get 40 and Paul George isn't going to get 33 when they're playing with Joel. No. It's just going to be a little bit different. But so it was great. Now, here's the deal. The thing is that between the both of them tonight that stood out to me was there was a major sense of urgency, right? A major sense of urgency in the beginning where Tyrese Maxey scored like 9 points early. and the score was 15-8. So at that particular point, he had more points than the entire Charlotte Hornets. And then all of a sudden, from that point on, all of a sudden, it became the Paul George show. So they had an extreme sense of urgency to whereas they were going to attack, they were going to be aggressive, and they were going to play to their level. So that was extremely encouraging. So when we talk about the way Maxey played, he played great, but he also said that he wanted to have fun, right? So he was out there, he was laughing, he was joking, he was being his normal self. He was even getting heckled by these two old ladies, right? Said to him like, "Hey, what am I doing? What am I doing to y'all? I'm not messing with y'all. Why y'all keep messing with me?" So Maxie was his normal, fun-loving self. These two guys took over and put everything in their hands.
That they did. And I think the biggest thing you look at too is it's the Hornets. And you're absolutely right in being the realistic point of view and saying, listen, like when Joel Embiid's out there on the floor, it's Joel Embiid's game. But it does show that Paul George, you need to get him the ball if Joel Embiid is struggling, because there's going to be times where Joel is double teamed, where he's turning the ball over, where he's not 100%. Paul George can already do that, but now you've actually seen it and seen what he can do. Once again, it's against the Hornets. The 76ers need to find a better game plan for him when Joel Embiid is also on the floor. But that's kind of for later when Joel comes back as well. But the biggest thing to me is that, you can look at it and say it's the Hornets and, they should have won this game. But there was a kind of a time where both of us saw, or there was realistically a time when we said, yeah, the 76ers could lose that game because they didn't look great against the Pacers when Joel Embiid went out. So, you don't want to get your hopes too high, 76ers fans, that, oh, well, they beat the Hornets, this is great. But I don't remember one time in one season where we've said one day, maybe the 76ers should tank, or you know what, maybe they're actually going to be good. They're going to totally be okay. That's just how this season has been. It has been so up and down for this team. But looking at Paul George, looking at Tyrese Maxey, I think the way they played too, Keith, is also what helped the rest of the team be able to get around them and play extremely well too in terms of the bench, which we'll talk about later. But when you have your guys with a sense of urgency going out there, wanting to put up those numbers, wanting to play to get that win, that's going to help out the rest of the team because they had fun and it hasn't been a fun season.
Yeah, it's true. But I will say this. We will be remiss to not talk about Kelly Oubre early in this segment, just because they wouldn't have won that game without Kelly Oubre. Because when you look at the fourth quarter, there was a point where, Maxey was coming down. He was missing shots. Paul wasn't really getting shots. And it just seemed like that Kelly Oubre was coming up with big baskets and grabbing, playing good defense and making rebounds. Kelly in that fourth quarter, he ended up with 9 points on 2-for-2 shooting, right? He was 4-for-4 from the line. He had 2 big rebounds, right? One was offensive, the other one was defensive. Maxey ended up with 10 points, but that's only because now he did get to the foul line, but he made 8 of 10 free throws. So, in that fourth quarter, it was one of those things where, like, to me, as great as PG was, as great as Maxey was, they would not have won the game if it wasn't for Kelly Oubre's 9 points in that fourth. He ended up with 19. So I just wanted to give him a little shout out because, they wouldn't have won the game without him.
And what did you say in the last episode that we had? Kelly Oubre needs to be the one to step up. Kelly Oubre needs to be the one to not just do the little things because that's what he can do, but also kind of be that guy that they need to score when he can be. And we both thought that he could be that guy. Now, it is the Hornets, so we don't want to say, well, Kelly Oubre sure that he can do everything. But when you look at it, you say, okay, he really is going to be that piece because we talk about Joel Embiid, right? That's been the back and forth of that sinus fracture. He'll be reevaluated, but also there is no Jared McCain for a while. So Jared McCain was that spark plug. Now, Oubre not necessarily coming off the bench, but at the same time, can he be looked at now as that fourth guy if he consistently keeps on doing this? And Keith, this is somebody that you really looked at saying he needs to have a big game or he needs to have sort of big games going forward because of no Jared McCain. Do you think that the team, Nick Nurse and Kelly Oubre was starting to feel that? Do you feel that Kelly has just been able to kind of step up to the plate at any point? Because you've been able to see this team throughout practice and throughout the games. How have they been utilizing Kelly Oubre in practice to get ready for this point?
Oh, no doubt. Like, yeah, he could be the guy. I mean, because the thing is, I feel like Kelly Oubre is not for a lack of talent. If there's a knock on Kelly Oubre, it's he can become a little bit streaky at times. Like
Hmm.
he can make he like he'll have games where you look at him like, yo, he should be an all-star. And there are other games and you'll say, yo, bruh, like that three isn't working. I think you need to drive in, right? But I also think that he's a good enough player. But I felt like when you play with Tyrese Maxey, Tobias Harris,
Hmm.
Joel Embiid. Now, with the other guys that they have on this team, you have to settle into a role. I think that he's not afraid of the bright lights. He's one of those guys that, he keeps telling you, hey, I'm a good player too now. I'm a good player. So I feel like he'll be fine. I really do. I really believe that he will be fine moving forward, especially until Joel comes back, right? You know what I mean? I think that he's going to get a lot more touches and get more involved. So no, I'm not concerned about Kelly at all. And I do think that once Joel does come back, he can be the fourth option, so to speak.
He was also a plus 19 last night, too, looking at the 76ers. So Kelly Oubre, hats off to him because they wouldn't have won that game without him either. Even though PG and Tyrese did combine for 73 points, it was really a team effort. We're going to keep breaking that down, too. And also what Paul George had to say after the game, how he felt after his performance, and what he looks forward to going forward for the Philadelphia 76ers. And hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return to FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more as well on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets for the first $5 bet. That's at FanDuel.com. Visit FanDuel.com today. And with FanDuel, if you necessarily don't want to bet on the NFL, well, that's okay because you can bet on the NBA, you can bet on the MLB, college hoops, everything in between. You can get it all only at FanDuel. And if you're looking for some odds right now, you're saying, all right, I'm new to sports betting a little bit. What should I bet? Well, there's a good one that FanDuel has a line out for right now. Thursday night, Broncos, Chargers in the NFL. Chargers -3 favorites right now. That's a pretty good line, people. So if you want to go and bet that and you want to lock it in, make sure you go do so right here, right now, because these bets can change as the days go on. So head over to FanDuel. That's America's #1 sports book. Be sure to visit FanDuel today to place all of your sports bets. There's no better place than FanDuel to do so. All right. So Paul George, a big night, really a career night in terms of three-pointers made all time, now 10th on that list as well. But Keith, you had a chance to talk from him and hear from him as well. What did Paul George have to say after this big performance?
It's for him. It's just a matter of being himself, right? He talked to Joel, he talked to Nick Nurse, he talked to Tyrese, and they told him that we want you to do the things that you are capable of doing and being more of yourself, right? Now the thing is that all sounds great and it sounds fine and dandy, and believe me, I love it to hear that. But I think that they also need to know or they also need to recognize and realize the things that he can do. Because getting three shots in the first half, like that's telling me you're not trying to get it in the first half against the last time they played when they played the Indiana Pacers.
Right.
That's telling me that the team is not getting you involved, right? So with that being said, like, yeah, he's saying that he's going to be more aggressive. He's going to just go out there and he's going to have fun in regards to him being 10th all time, you know what? He's really excited to do that. He says it means a lot to his people back home for him, his family, but he's also excited to do that, to accomplish that as a 76er. And I was like, why? And he was like, well, this is Kobe's hometown. You know how I
Mhm.
feel about Kobe. And so this is something that I really wanted to do. And so, Paul George is saying all the right things. He's playing well. He was phenomenal. But, to me is I want to see the 76ers continue to give him these opportunities to shine when Joel Embiid comes back.
And I think that they have to. And to me, that is the only way that they can win and go far. Because you look at it, and I understand that Joel Embiid is the centerpiece. He's one of the most dominant bigs, if not the most dominant in the entire league. But there's been so many times in playoff games and everything in between that it's been the constant. Well, Joel Embiid doesn't have anybody. Well, Ben Simmons didn't work out. Well, James Harden didn't work out. But maybe you look at it down the line and say maybe it doesn't work out because there just wasn't opportunity there for it to. Now, I'm still looking at it as saying those guys just didn't work out. But Paul George is showing you that on a given night that he can dominate. I'm not saying he's going to put up these numbers once Joel Embiid comes back. I don't think that he necessarily needs to all the time, but you need to get him the ball more. You need to give him more opportunities to be able to create. Because Keith, he said to you and throughout practice that, I'm going to do what I need to do. I'm going to fill in that role. If I need to step back, I'm going to, not verbatim, but kind of summing up what he said. At this point, if I'm Paul George, I'm saying, listen, I know Joel Embiid is the centerpiece of this team, but also this is how I can help you get where you need to be. I know Paul George wants to fit in, but he also needs to stand out at the same time. And it goes to show just how much this game still means to him, how much he still wants to do, how much he still wants to win. And we saw it last night.
Yeah, we saw it. I mean, I think they're smart enough to realize that they have to get them involved. I mean, if they don't, it's going to be selfish on certain people's part because Paul. The one thing I will say is he took the knee brace off and he looked extremely athletic. I was a little nervous for him and he kept falling down, but the thing is, his athleticism is back. He's more fluid. Um, Maxey can't get it done by himself. Joel Embiid, he had 2 really good games, but for the most part, he looked like a guy who lost the step right now. So in order for you to win, and we talked about this before, it's going to have to be PG. It's going to have to be Paul George.
He is a difference maker for the Philadelphia 76ers, and we did see that last night. But also last night, a big contributor, the bench as well, some names that we're going to talk about, some performances that most people probably were not expecting, and we will touch on that on the other side. And with Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial flavors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.25% on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account contributions. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Terms to apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rates may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. And did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That definitely has happened to me multiple times on many occasions. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and then I look at my account and say, all right, well, I need to actually go and cancel that. And I probably should have about 6 months ago before I forgot it was there. And Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. And people, when life gets busy and a lot of things go on, this is something that you need. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features is the subscription tracker. I have used it to cancel services that I wasn't really using anymore, and I've saved a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my future, which is absolutely huge when you're looking to invest and save. One of my goals for 2025 is to be able to do that a little bit more, and this has been able to help me. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/locked on today. That's rocketmoney.com/locked on. Rocketmoney.com/locked on. Make sure you go check it out. Contributions from the bench, what the 76ers have been needing for a lot of time. Now, Andre Drummond not coming off the bench, but on the glass, he was superior. 15 rebounds. He calls himself the best rebounder of all time. Well, the Philadelphia 76ers need to see that. And one player in particular you look at as well is Eric Gordon. And Keith, this is somebody that we have touched on a lot. You look at it and you say, okay, he comes in to be a three-point shooter. He came in at one point, was able to be 3 for 3 right off the bat. So what is your take on how the bench was able to do last night? Who do you think stuck out the most? Because I know we've been waiting for a performance like this from Eric Gordon and others.
Yeah, you know what? The people who stood out the most to me, it actually was Eric Gordon. It was it was his performance in the third quarter. Early on, the first half, the bench was horrible. I
Yeah.
mean, Nick Nurse can say what he wants, and what I mean by that, he was raving over it and everything. But in the first half, I believe they were outscored in bench points 18-2. Now, you can argue and say that it was one of those things because, um, Maxey and Paul George was dominating, and I get that. But they had 5 shots, and a lot of times they were easy, makeable baskets, and they were 0 for 5.
Yeah.
Eric Gordon was 0 for 2 on threes during that time. In the second half, he comes out and he got extended minutes and he drained 3 consecutive threes. Great shots, great looks, everything. And so I have to commend them for that. And then what happens is you look at Kyle Lowry and you start seeing him like sacrificing his body, doing other things. He wasn't getting assists. He wasn't doing a lot of like things that uh, you recognize him for getting, or you remember him getting over the years. But he played well. You look at Ricky Council. Ricky Council was hitting free throws, right? So I feel like the bench did play well. Yabusele, he kind of struggled again.
Yeah.
Another game, the third straight game that he like really struggled mightily. But at the same time, I think that as the game wore on, the bench played better. You know.
I want to touch on Yabusele a little bit. I know a ton of people are going to be like, well, the bench played well. They won a game. Why can't you guys just be happy? Well, we have to look forward for this team and look at players and things that stick out to us that we really want to look at and dive deep into. So, where are you worried about Yabusele? Are you worried a lot? Is it not a cause to worry right now, Keith? Because when you look at this, even when Joel Embiid comes back, he's still not going to play on back-to-backs. So you have Andre Drummond in there, and Yabu was kind of looked at to be that next guy, especially when Joel doesn't play. Is it time to worry a little bit maybe about what's going on? Is it just the consistency of him constantly having to change where he's playing? What is your take on being able to see how Yabu has struggled in these last 3 games?
Well, the thing is, the problem with Yabu is that when he's really not making shots, he's not helping.
Hmm.
So he has to be able to make shots. And when he's not taking shots, he's not helping. He was 0 for 2 last night, 2 3-pointers. And the problem is on the defensive end, he just struggles out there. He just does. But again, when he's knocking down 4, 5, 6 threes, you're not really caring about what he does on the other end, right? And I feel like the problem is right now when you have Embiid and all those guys back, you need him to be more of a role player, a guy that's going to get rebounds, a guy that's going to defend, do all those other things. And it just seems like that's just not his game. And that's why guys like KJ Martin, Ricky Council, are better fits when they're playing with Embiid and them because he just can't do it. He just can't do it.
Yeah, Yabu has been struggling, and it's unfortunate because he's somebody that in the beginning of the season was kind of a pleasant surprise, like Jared McCain coming out and playing. But with Yabusele struggling a little bit, and I'm talking about Joel Embiid's games that he's not playing, can the 76ers rely on him? Where do they kind of look at? Do they look more at KJ Martin? Because at the end of the day, unless you have Pete Nance going in there to back up Andre Drummond, you're going to kind of count on Yabusele. What switch do you make to try to make him maybe a little bit more comfortable? Because you can't make every single player out there comfortable. I mean, that's not a realistic point of view to look at things, but what can this team do to try to get him back to how he was? Or is it just saying Yabusele kind of needs to play in this role that he's uncomfortable with and figure it out down the line? Because when Joel Embiid does come back and he is healthy, that's what Yabu's going to be looked at to do.
I think it's simple. It's kind of just, it depends on the matchup.
Hmm.
The thing is, Yabu is, big dude. I mean, I'm talking about, big muscular guy, looks like a football player. He does. I mean, he does.
Yeah.
The thing is, though, is kind of like it depends on the matchup. But if you have like undersized or quick, athletic post players, well, Yabu is a defensive liability in that setting. But if you have like a slower team or whatever, where he can bang with people, right? Where he can get up and use his strength against them, then it's going to help out. And then also he can stretch the floor. But if it's real athletic and it becomes a track meet, kind of sort of like this, Indiana was, kind of sort of like, like what Charlotte is and Chicago athletic teams, that's where he tends to get exposed because he can't keep up. And, not to repeat myself, and it comes to a point where if he's not making shots, then he's really not helping.
Right. Yeah, and you look at the same thing with a lot of the 76ers bench players, Eric Gordon being one of them too, saying that he needs to make shots. Well, last night, he was able to do just that, especially off the bench. So the Philadelphia 76ers looking for that bench help. Where do you want to see them go from here? Because Joel Embiid isn't going to be back for that Hornets game, is what it looks like right now. It's going to be reevaluated at the end of the week. We don't know if Paul George is going to play in that Hornets game because the day after they do have the Cavs. But I think for me, Keith, it's as simple as I want to see more of this from Paul George. Take advantage of the time without Joel Embiid, figure out a little bit of ways that you can keep on doing this, and then maybe that'll mesh together a little bit once the three of them are all together. What's your biggest takeaway from this game after the Philadelphia 76ers came out on top against a struggling Hornets team, may I add, 121-108? Your overall takeaway before we
I
send
mean,
things off.
Paul George is, I mean, he's a good player. He's
Yeah.
a guy that, that they need to depend on more, or they need to get him involved more. I mean, and the reason why I'm saying this is because, let's be real. Like before Joel came back, they won 3 out of 4 games before Joel came back. The 3 games they won, Paul George played in, and he
Right.
played well in all of them. He only had 1 game where he had a poor shooting night, but the other ones played well. So my biggest takeaway is that you got to get the guy involved. You got to keep him involved. That it is what it is. I mean, he cannot go a first half with only 3 shots. Now that's on him. He has to be aggressive, but they also got to realize and make a conscious effort of getting him involved. And I think if they do that, they will be okay.
It's crazy to think that they may be okay this season after everything that has happened. Jared McCain going down, Joel Embiid getting another injury. But Paul George, you did get him for a reason. You did pay him a lot of money for a reason. And he is a very, very good player, and he has been throughout his career. So the 76ers, they've got to figure out a way, and they will be okay if they do so. So Paul George showing that he deserves to get the ball more, even when Joel Embiid is in the lineup, and figuring out how the big three, not just the 2-man game, but the big three can all play together. Philadelphia 76ers come out on top 121-108. Last night, they will be back in action against the Hornets. They return back to Philadelphia. at 7 p.m. on Friday night. Thank you all so much for tuning in to Locked On 76ers. For Keith Pompey, I'm Kayla Santiago saying so long, and we'll see you all next time.